Y'all, Wizard101 test realm just dropped. There is a bunch of new gear that they just added. So today, I wanted to go through the newest template at max level in Wizard101. I honestly think it's going to completely change the game, and it might even address some of the biggest concerns we've had around gear over the past year. So where can you get this gear? You'll need a gold key, but these are actually very, very easy to get, especially after the most recent update. A lot of people don't realize this, but if you actually go through your badges and, you know, like look at the ones with a gift on them, there's a bunch of badges, especially if you played the game for a while. There's a bunch of them that reward you gold keys. That's right. You don't actually have to do anything. You might have already done more than enough to get a bunch of gold keys. And once you have those, all you have to do is have access to the area in Mushu to farm this. You can get a bunch of gear and even the new spellments that drop from the Mushu boss. This boss is one turnable, so it's honestly probably the easiest way to farm gear that we've had since Wallaroo dropped. Now, as far as the gear itself, now this is where it gets interesting. Every single piece of gear at max level seems to give up one stat in order to give you all the other stats. And what I want to say is that for the first time ever, Wizard101 has finally gotten rid of the resist stat as a trade-off. Now, here's the thing. Considering this is literally the pet that I run as a storm wizard, and I've actually gotten to captain by running this, not having resist on a piece of gear doesn't mean the gear is automatically bad. However, I will say this. If you're gonna give up resist, I think you can only afford to do it on either a storm or a fire, and that's about it. Now, as far as the gear itself, other than the fact that it doesn't give resist, it does seem to give very, very offensive stats. I was a little surprised to notice this. Compared to the Wastelander hat, this does not actually give you better offense with shads. If you were to switch over from what I think is the best hat in the game for basically every school right now, which is a Wastelander hat, I think you end up obviously losing resist, but you also end up losing a little bit of damage and also a little bit of pip chance. You do gain a little bit of pierce, which is actually a very important offensive stat, especially in PvP. But that pattern actually seems to happen across the board, right? When we're comparing what I think is the best robe, which is a Stalker robe. For the resist that you lose, you gain 3 pierce, and that's about it. You also end up losing a little bit of pip chance. You lose a little bit of HP. There's a very, very similar thing happening with the boots as well. So I'm a little disappointed in this. When they said there's a free-to-play shadow template, what I would have liked to see is more options for more schools. It feels like even Storm, you're just giving up so much damage with the hat, robe, and boots that I'm not really sure that it's worth it. Now, as annoying as that is, there is some big news here. I think this is the big takeaway. What you see is a side-by-side comparison of a level 170 raid wand to a wand that you can get with just a simple gold key. You can even get reagents from this boss and eventually just craft this after just a few runs. And why is that point so relevant? For the amount of effort you do in the raid, you actually now have access to a better wand for free. If we do a side-by-side, yes, you do lose a little bit of block, but that's basically all you lose. You lose a little bit of damage, but you gain it right back in pierce. I'm really happy that there is now a shadow wand that anybody can get without raiding. This has been a big barrier of entry for PvP. At max level, I would argue that you could get away with PvPing with 3 pieces of shad raiding. And one thing that they did recently, they added a robe that gives extremely well-rounded stats for every school, with the exception of shad raiding. But do you have access to shad raiding on the other pieces of gear if you didn't raid up to this point? You could argue that you could open up some packs and get a Wastelander hat and get a really good shad hat. And while I do think raid boots are still the best boots that give shad rating, it wasn't like completely out of the question to run the Stalker boots, right, as another piece that could give shad. But when it came to wands that gave shad rating, there was nothing that you could do if you didn't raid, meaning even if you had very good stats, you were pretty much capped at 2 pieces of shad rating on your gear if you chose not to raid before this update. So this wand being added to the game is a big deal. I think this is gonna fix a lot of issues. I'm a little disappointed in the main gear. I think this is kind of goofy. I don't know if they didn't have any options with this gear, as in like they've given up every other stat already, you know, if you look at it, enough templates, so now they've just chosen resist. But the bright side is we have an insanely good wand. These item cards aren't like terrible either. You get a hidden mantle on a balance. You get a really cool 6-pip hidden weakness on a death. Is this better than headless? Maybe not. I do think the damage is worth thinking about, and you don't need a death pip, so you might actually find find a way to use it. The fire one just gets a solid 5-pip hit. Probably not worth it. The ice one is a Tamagooch Gooch, but it seems to be a little bit lower damage than the TC version. Also, maybe worth, maybe not. Who really knows? You get the classic Ninja Pigs for Myth, which I think is always going to be worth it. And you also get a 5-pip hit for Storm, which is also really, really cool. Storm is one of those schools, if you have base hits that just use their TPP to the best of their ability, it's a pretty good idea. And finally, Life gets this bum-ass, you know, 5-pip hit, which I don't think is worth it. What's also notable, all these wands give reshuffle. Now, what's kind of cool about this template is that it also, they kind of seem to have added yet another, you know, type of a theme that you could use. This seems to be a slightly higher pip chance version of the Reaver gear that we've gotten from Wallaroo. However, to trade off for that pip chance, you basically lose just a little bit of HP. The big key difference at this point is basically the jewel, right? Either you have a square jewel on your Athame, or you could use this new Athame and get a triangle jewel. For schools that want to keep their HP high, I still think the Reaver gear is going to be better, like the Reaver Athame anyway. But if you happen to have excess HP, you could use that triangle socket for pip chance, shad chance, accuracy, even an item card. So it could be a game changer. The amulet is some hot ass. You just lose resist. I don't really know what the hell the deal is with this. I don't think you get anything for losing that resist, so probably not worth it. And the rings surprisingly seem to give up a little bit of damage for a little bit of crit, which I don't think is worth it. And finally, I may or may not have saved one of the best pieces for last. The new deck is probably the most meta deck we've ever seen. Now, why do I say this, right? One, much like the Skyfarer deck at level 160, the only stat that the deck doesn't give is health. That means that you get everything that you could want. Pip Conserve, crit, block, and Archmaster. Second, you get a Dark Surge card, which means now every main deck will have 5 Dark Surges, or at least up to 5 Dark Surges instead of the 4 that we're used to. So that's a big deal as well. It's a very good card. It's just gonna make you deck fail it less. It's a big deal. And what I think is super worth noting is that this is the first circle deck that we've had at level 170 that also gives Pip Conserve. The trade-off with every circle deck is that you've basically not been able to have access to Pip Conserve, especially the way they've done it up to this point. And some schools, you need to run a circle deck. You need that extra pierce. You need that extra damage. This is true for most offensive schools. So to have to do that and not have Pip Conserve is very annoying because, you know, let's say that you're a school that has a bunch of odd pip spells that are very relevant and you're an offensive school, there's been a gap in stats. Now, those don't exist. And once again, the really cool part is you don't have to pay crowns. You don't have to do anything raid-wise. It's just a very easily farmable boss to get really good gear. Now, they did something a little different with this update. There are 2 templates that are the exact same stats, but they give slightly different item cards. Now, specifically the wands, I think the item cards could be very different because the other template that I'm talking about is from the Avalon boss. This drops from Lambent, the Avalon key boss. And instead of all of these pigs as item cards, it gives King Arts. For some schools, that's a very big deal, right? Like Fire King Art, it's a hit that hits through shields. You're gonna want that over the item card here because you're not changing the stats. You're just getting a better item card that everyone could use. So depending on the school, especially if your King Art is good, I'd say for Life, I'd say for Storm, I'd say for Fire, you're probably gonna want to look at the Avalon wand. The stats are, again, the exact same. Even the item card on the deck is the exact same. So whether you choose to farm this gold key boss or the Avalon key boss is probably up to whether you're literally one of those schools that just wants a King Art on your wand, or maybe the new spellments that have been added to that drop table, maybe you prefer that over this boss right here. All in all, y'all, this is a huge step up in terms of gear access, especially when it comes to PvP. This is like a really good update in that sense. Did they miss a little bit of an opportunity with the main gear? I think they did. I don't know what the solution is. I just feel like giving up res and also giving up damage, it's kind of a weird combo. Another thing I'm kind of concerned about, while I love that they have circle decks with Pip Conserve, that part, amazing. I'm not a huge fan of there being even more Dark Surges in play. I think this spell is very obnoxious. I think 4 was already a lot, so having a 5th one in your deck, kind of annoying. Maybe that might like shake things up in a negative way, but this is definitely a gigantic net positive. I think finally we're gonna have a level range at level 170 where people can PvP with without raiding, maybe they can get better stats by raiding. That might not ever be not a thing. But at least people that don't raid can be competitive again, which I think is a huge deal. Let me know what y'all's thoughts are on the way they've added the gear template, what y'all think about the main gear, the wand, the deck, where you plan on farming it, what you think about the fact that they've added it to pre-existing key bosses. There's a lot to talk about. I look forward to reading all of y'all's comments in the comments. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a sub if you're new, and if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon. And yeah.